Brought to you by JMR Rentals, professional digital cinema and broadcast equipment rentals in Brooklyn, New York. JMRNY.com. Hello and welcome to No Rest for the Weekend, where we go behind the scenes and talk to the creators of independent entertainment. I'm Jason Godbey, and joining me via Zoom today, he is the writer-director of the award-winning series Undependent, Mr. Ray Harrington. Welcome, Ray.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Hey, man, thanks for joining me. It's great to have you. You got a killer podcast mic, which is so helpful. You know, you like these days in COVID times. I got, it's usually somebody's talking to me on a phone or a laptop, and yeah, I really appreciate the good sound quality, and I think the listeners will as well. So I want to get into it. I want to talk about Undependent, but first I want to talk to you about you and kind of see how you got into this whole mess. What is your origin story?
I appreciate that, and the phrasing of that sounded like this was our first therapy session. I want to hear more about you and how you got into this mess, and but no, it's kind of a funny story, the way we ended up with doing the show, but I guess you wanted more about me. I'm a stand-up comic, first and foremost. That's my full-time job and my passion. And then filmmaking is, it started out as more something I loved. I loved film in general, and then doing stand-up comedy, you surround yourself with creative people, and inevitably a lot of that creative energy kind of overflows from one medium to the next. And so I found myself doing sketches and short films and things like that, and at somewhere along the way, just beyond doing silly fun short films with my friends and some sketch stuff, I started talking about making a documentary. And the idea was initially this concept of I didn't have a dad growing up, and I was looking at starting a family with my wife, and what does it mean to be a man, and the typical masculine things that I thought I didn't know from growing up, that I only learned from TV and movies. And then my wife told me that she was pregnant, and my fellow comedian and very close friend Derek Furtado and I started talking more about this documentary, and it felt like with that ticking clock, it needed to happen. And so I think being naive and not being familiar with a lot of the filmmaking world allowed me to step into something that I probably had no business doing at first. And so it was just some friends and some cameras, and raising a little bit of funds to get some gear. And we made this documentary, and that was my first experience with directing, and also being in front of the camera for a feature. And so we made that movie, and started doing some festivals, and we were lucky enough to get distribution. We were on Hulu with that, and we had a lot of fun with making it and the process. And then once it was done, it was kind of an odd thing. I'm a stand-up comic, and people were asking, "Are you going to do another documentary?" And it felt disingenuous to do another documentary and kind of shove myself in front of the camera and go, "Oh, how do I feel about this one?" And so we started talking about what that next step would be, and it was Undependent. So it's very strange. I've really enjoyed the world of movies and television and making things in that world. But yeah, definitely a stand-up comic first and foremost. Did I ramble too much? I did. It's COVID, man. I haven't talked to like anybody. You're the first adult outside of my wife and 6-year-old I've talked to in, I don't know, 72 hours.
I'm probably more on par with the 6-year-old than your wife, but it's okay. So you made a documentary. You made a feature film documentary. What was the name of that?
That was called Be a Man.
Okay.
And it was really just an examination of, it was kind of a journey documentary following me attempting to learn the prototypical manly things like fighting and drinking and cars and all that stuff. And so I put myself in these situations of finding my signature manly drink by sitting down and drinking, I think, oh my God, 10 or 15 mixed drinks in an hour and picking the right one, and fighting 5-time world champion Vinny Pazienza in the boxing ring and things like that. So it was a lot of fun. It was so guerrilla. It was, I think 4 or 5 people, just everybody grab a camera, let's shoot this thing. And looking back, I had no business trying to do it, but I'm so proud of what we accomplished with that. And it's so personal. I think the pride in that is warranted. And it was a crash course in film and learning more about how to make things. And I've always had a bone for that. A bone for that? What am I saying? This interview's off the rails. I've had a bone for that?
You're doing fine.
Oh,
you're doing fine.
Strike it from the record.
But so that, and then you came to Undependent. Now, what is Undependent about? Like, give me like the log line, like the Hollywood pitch for that show.
Knowing a little bit of my backstory, this is going to come out of left field. Undependent is about 2 documentary filmmakers who had some success making a documentary, now desperate to figure out what the next documentary will be. And every episode or week, these 2 buffoons are going to go out and try and make the next super popular documentary, the water cooler conversation documentary series on Netflix or something like that. Their egos and their flaws will always get the best of them in every situation. They're 2 guys you end up rooting for, but also you're very excited to see how they will fail.
This is very meta. This is very, very autobiographical. You kind of approach a danger zone because you got like camera crews watching camera crews type of thing, and at some point, it's like, when does it stop? The making of the making of the making of. Was there any point where you guys had to say, oh wait, this is too much, this is too our head is up our own ass kind of situation? Was there any kind of, what was the line of demarcation to stop that?
I personally love I love when projects go meta. I really do enjoy that kind of nod to everything. I think it comes from stand-up for me, being a stand-up comedian on stage. For myself, I'm very, very in the moment. I like to talk to people. I like to riff. I like to play. The most obvious thing that is in front of you as an audience or as a comedian is the fact that a show is happening. So using the show as commenting on the show itself is definitely a through line for me. So it just naturally carried over to filmmaking, because that's what we're doing, right? And especially in documentary, every single documentary has a crew of people, either one person or 100, trying to tell a story. They're there specifically to capture the thing, and to pretend otherwise, I think is a little disingenuous. That's why I like documentaries. I gravitate more towards documentaries that are a little more honest about that. I understand that anything like that is going to have a narrative. It has a narrative. It's gonna follow that. But when it comes to that meta kind of world and kind of stepping back, another breaking the fourth wall, I love stuff that lives in the fourth wall, where there is no fourth wall. The whole thing is there. And I think in documentary, you have an ability to not so much have the making of something, but the thing that is being made is what you're watching. And that's what Undependent really is. It's kind of found footage almost. It's the what we're watching as an audience is the footage that the camera crew is shooting while they're also shooting this documentary. So it's them trying to figure everything out. So I mean, I'm personally I want to go even further down the meta rabbit hole. with the show, we've talked about where it can go. I would love to see these guys eventually get to a place where they have a little bit of success and turn on each other. And one of the things that I was pitching Derek Furtado and our producing partner Lee Leshin is I really wanted to see this happen. They split the crew. They decide they don't want to be buddies anymore. They're done with each other, and they have to divvy up the camera crew like it's children in a divorce. And then they start fighting about who can appear in the other person's documentary, and they want their faces blurred, and then you just get blur on blur on blur, and things like that. I love the idea of getting as meta as possible, because the documentary, the mockumentary, right, the fake documentary format in comedy is so normalized now. It's so prevalent that you can get a show like Modern Family for 100 seasons that is mockumentary with no documentary happening. There's no crew shooting anything. So I think the world of getting into that meta place, we're just dipping our toe into it. I think there's way more we can play with.
Yeah, I would imagine that with this sort of thing, because you're doing this, it's all like cinema verite. Like all of this is happening, and it feels very like I'm staging it, but we're showing the fact that we're staging it, therefore it doesn't look staged. Is it really written out? Like, is it more free form? Are you guys improvising dialogue, or is this strictly like really tightly scripted?
We started writing more towards giving ourselves the opportunity to improvise more scenes and play around. The scripts came from Derek and I improvising together, and then I would go and write these scenes out and figure everything out, and stitch everything together. And then we expected to have more improv in the shooting process, but we were so crunched for time. We shot two 22-minute episodes in 4 days. So we just had no time. So it really was stick to the page. A couple of little improvised lines got in there that I'm thrilled with. But yeah, the project was so fast that we really just had to get what was on the page. So this first chunk of episodes are pretty close to what was on the page. I'd say about 95%. And in the future, more room to play would be great. I would just take an extra day. I would like one extra day to just I probably sleep in those 4 days would be better. But yeah, it was pretty close to the page.
It's interesting that you said that, because it doesn't feel tightly scripted, which I think is a testament to you guys and how naturalistic you are. Because
thank you.
Because when you're doing that kind of thing, if it feels really scripted, then you've kind of failed.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're trying to get this very cinema verite. It doesn't feel like acting kind of thing. The minute somebody's like, this sounds like dialogue, then that's where you fall off the cliff, I would imagine. And I was going to ask you, in terms of like challenges, was the biggest challenge kind of like getting it done in the crunch that you had? And I don't know how much budget you had to work with. Was there ever a challenge of like, maybe because if you have people filming people, then you need double the crew? Did you have that issue where you had?
No, we lucked out by having a very small crew that really got what we were going for. And it really just came down to being careful about the moments that we wanted to see crew. We also didn't want to make this because the camera crew is there and recording everything. Well, we don't have to worry about blocking. We'll just make it up. And if somebody's in the background, so be it. We wanted those moments where you could see the camera crew to be very specific and kind of remind you that this was happening, or use it for a punchline, for a joke, or a nice button, something like that. So we were just careful with that. And we just had two awesome camera guys, and then our sound guy, and two other people kind of running around doing what they could. And so it was a really small crew. And I think if I had my druthers, right? That's not a word we hear enough anymore. If I had my druthers, I would have had more people, more money, and more time, right? That would be great. Oh man. But it was I think it was just enough. I think the small crew allowed us to move quickly, which we had to, but it also gave us that more of that sense of these guys and their struggle of just, fast and loose. And we got to get the shot and we'll do it. Yeah, I think playing with that space, as long as you're careful with it, it can be really fun. But to be lazy and just use it as an excuse to why, oh, that's why you see a boom mic, because it's supposed to be there, then it's just lazy. Yeah, it needs to be intentional.
Yeah, because I had one of the questions I had, because I remember working on different projects, and you have those writers room moments where you kind of like try to okay, so if it's found footage, right? There are moments that don't seem like found footage. Like I think I watched the pilot episode, and it starts with you trying to get a job.
Right, right.
Now, are we to believe that there's a camera crew shooting you while you're trying to get a job? Or is
No,
that
and
the movie camera? Like, is that like a separate kind of thing?
yeah, that's the the single cam regular kind of process. It's not the documentary happening at that point. And we kind of used that as we wanted a moment where people realize, wow, okay, this is a camera crew now. So that whole opening interview is, we used letterboxing. We used a really blue filter on there, and we kept everything very cinematic, and all the shots are locked down because we didn't want any movement there. So just keep it as cinematic as possible, and then let the credit sequence roll, and the opening credits. And then right as soon as that's done, just give people like a real shock to the system of cutting to, the full screen, shaky cam. We see the crew, and have that moment happen. And really, I think it served two purposes. One, to highlight the fact that this was a different thing, because it's not like The Office, right? The Office is, mockumentary with a camera crew following subjects. This is if The Office camera crew turned the cameras on themselves, and that's the show we were watching. So this gets extra muddy in how we have to, when I was writing this, it was like, okay, how do I properly lay out? How do I lay the pipe for this so people understand what's happening here, so we can get to the funnies? That it served that purpose. And then also, I really liked the interview scene, and I wanted to have that in there. And this was a fun way to do it without having a camera crew. We had another scene written that would have explained having a camera crew there, and then we realized it's like, okay, this is like a 20-minute explanation of doing this. So by having that kind of open on a single cam and then switch to the mockumentary, I thought it was a little more fun.
Yeah, that's kind of the central problem I find with found footage movies, because there usually comes a point in them where it doesn't work.
Right.
There's usually a point where you're like, okay, nobody's going to pick up a camera and film the killer as they're running at them with the knife. Nobody's going to do that. And in certain movies, there's kind of a shift, like maybe towards the climax or something, where it kind of shifts, and you're like, okay, we don't know what this camera is now, but now we're in a movie kind of thing. And you really got to delineate the two, otherwise it is incredibly confusing for the audience.
Right, and that's why that single cam style, it's just that interview. That's the first thing we see. The rest of the show, 100%. It's the documentary crew. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because there are many little jokes or scene ideas that we have played with for down the line, if we make more, that really emphasize exactly the issue that you're talking about. We have a whole episode that I would love to do where these guys want to do a survivor kind of documentary. They go out in the woods with an intense survivalist guy, and they have their camera crew, and they go to bed. The guy takes their cell phones, everything away. They go to bed. In the morning, they wake up. Their survivalist has died in his sleep in his tent. And then these two idiots are left in the woods with no way to get out. And I think the entire episode, like what we talked about doing, it's like a joke about the situation and then a joke about the absurdity of a camera crew being with these guys, which is most of those Survivor Man and Bear Grylls kind of shows where they're doing this intense thing. It's like I don't think you're as hard as you think you are. I think the poor jerk schlepping a camera through the jungle is a tougher person to deal with this, because they have like 20 pounds on their shoulder, and they're setting up a shot. So playing with a lot of those things. I totally agree with you. Especially in horror, I think when you get into found footage for horror, at some point it's like, oh, listen, just put the camera down, just run, throw the camera at them. Throw the camera, take the battery out. That gives you another projectile. Throw everything at them, and by the end, you're flicking SD cards at them. You have to do it. But I totally agree. And again, to get into that meta place, that's where the show would have lived. This, Undependent kind of lived in that fourth wall.
I know exactly what you're saying, because I when I see stuff like that, and a lot of documentary stuff, because I work as a camera operator and I've been a camera op and an editor and stuff like that. And I always think about the guy who's, got the easy rig on, and he's got the, some heavy cinema camera, and he's running after some dude through the woods, sweating bullets, and, that guy, yeah, he's the real hero of this show.
Right. Yeah.
It's not the American Crabbers or whatever they are, the fishing show where it's like the deadliest
Oh,
catch.
yes.
It's
Yes.
the schmuck cameraman who's got to keep he's got to
Yes.
get the shot while these people are risking their lives.
Yeah. Oh, it's really dangerous for deadliest catch guy to be, hauling crab traps back onto the boat. It's like, yeah, try doing that with a rig on your shoulder and just standing there going, I hope we don't get a good wave through here, because I'm over the edge. It's it's very true.
Yeah, and it's good. It's a really good thing to be holding electrical equipment while you're doing that.
Right. And I think we lucked out too with that, because like I said, our crew was a crew of people that just really got the idea of the show. And our two camera operators, or our director of photography, Thomas Fishwick, worked on Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, and then Derek Kunzer, our second camera guy, has done a ton of documentary. So they really appreciated the nod towards trying to get stuff done and trying to make a thing. And I think that was a big through line through this. I think it's kind of a love letter to creative stuff. I think anybody that has to try and do something, anybody that's ever heard, oh, you're chasing your dream, will absolutely understand that sometimes that's a nightmare.
Oh my God, I felt so much, as someone who has worked many a day job, I felt so much in that first scene with the job. I was like, oh my God, I've been there. I'm going to wrap up soon, but I would love to know, what are the plans for the series at this point? What's the next step for you guys?
Yeah, so the show kind of hit a odd curveball here with coronavirus. Originally it was supposed to be a 2-episode pilot. We were talking to a network, and that was right before everything stopped. And so then we were sitting on these 2 episodes, and networks not making anything, and unsure if they were even going to be able to continue making what they were already, that they already had on the books. So we talked about what we were going to do and decided that we wanted to put it out, so people could see something, because I was going through just like, please give me something new in front of my eyeballs. I'm running out of things. And so we cut the show into a 6-part web series. And so we have that now. And once things come back to some kind of normal, we'd love to continue making the show. If that exists in a standard 22-minute format, great. If not, web is super fun, and we'll see what happens. And if none of those things, and I end up just dedicating my life to an OnlyFans, so be it.
Speaking of OnlyFans, where can we find you and your work on the web?
You can find me on on the big flannel on OnlyFans. No, you can find me on rayharringtoncomedy.com. That's kind of the landing page for all the things. You can find Undependent there, the documentary Be a Man, things like that. And then, all the social media links are there. Ray Harrington on Twitter and all the places. So yeah, that's where I am.
Great, thank you so much. And when you do have something else, come on back. We'll love to have you again.
All right. Does OnlyFans count for that too?
Well, maybe not.
All right.
But you can link
within
to our
reason.
Instagram within
Yeah.
reason. All right, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you so much for taking this trip down the rabbit hole. For more of our content, including our movie reviews, visit our website, norestfortheweekendpodcast.com. Don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Once again, I want to thank my guest, Ray Harrington, and I want to thank our sponsor, JMR Rentals. For Behind the Rabbit Productions, I'm Jason Godbey. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.